welcome back to Send News, the Inside Gaming podcast where we talk all about video games. I'm Brian, your host.
I'm Caden.
I'm Alana.
And I'm Evan, the hardest of hardcore gamers, back again. Also, it's craft day here.
Very nice.
That's adorable.
There you go.
Yeah, I've got like 7 more of these on the way. So if you guys want one, just let me know.
Thank you.
We have new Inside Gaming merch, which is Evan's Kids Craft Projects.
No, that's handmade. We can get a premium for that. And get arrested
Etsy for that shit.
And get arrested for employing children.
Yeah, there also is a catch. Once you put it on, you have to wear it forever. I've tried to take it off like 3 times.
Is it because
my daughter comes in here and sees that I'm not wearing it? It's my ass. Yeah.
All right, we have a pretty newsy week in video games. One of the big stories that happened this week, recently we got a state of play on Last of Us 2. I forget how quickly that game is coming. It's just a few weeks away. It's coming out in June, and
Feels weird right now, huh?
Yeah. It's for such a big game too. It feels like a game we've been waiting on, and then finally, when the release date gets here, I'm always just whoa! It's happening so fast.
It's weird too because there was a timeline where that game would be out already. We'd have already played it.
Yeah,
that's right. And I think from what I've seen on Twitter, it seems like review copies have been distributed. I've seen some journalists posting screens, and everyone's still clearly under NDAs and can't talk about it. But I love the anticipation and the state of play that they showed, and Neil Druckmann, kind of talked us through it, was awesome. It got me very hyped. It looks great. I'm all in on this game now.
Oh yeah.
I really was like, I haven't actually, I actually just got off a podcast with Troy Baker, but he didn't even watch the gameplay because he didn't want to have the gameplay segment spoiled for him, which I find so interesting.
Yeah.
Being Joel, is that he was like, I didn't want to see the gameplay parts. I'm happy to see the story parts, but I don't know what it feels like to play it, so I didn't want to see it. And
that's some dedication.
I know. And we had this whole conversation about how it's going to be like a really weird departure for him. I was like, is it going to be like you're losing that world and those characters? I'm just assuming that it's the final game that they'll come out with. I don't imagine there's going to be a part 3. He was like, yeah, it's like, I think I'm going to be really upset, but I can't predict it. But in any case, so because of that, I have not been able to talk to anyone actually properly about that gameplay. The little 10-minute, I think, segment that we got at the end of the state of play. I thought it looked fantastic.
Yeah.
Disregard all of... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the most striking thing to me was the sound. Like when people die, you're just like, oh, that sounds real bad.
Very
and then obviously this has been called out before, but when NPCs like call each other by name, it's pretty affecting.
Yeah. For
now, I mean, after the 100th time, I don't know if it's going to be as strong, but
I was really struck by the facial animations and just the level. That is the hardest thing to get right. And there is something where Ellie's, I guess, her girlfriend or someone, she basically was like, how would you rate that kiss? And her eyes just changed so slightly, but they conveyed so much by it. I just thought, wow, they are just killing it. It's
not the LA Noire effect where everyone just over emotes and so you're always suspicious of them.
Right.
But no, I mean, even the way that some of the stealth kills, the way that the NPCs would seem to be scared and then there would be an actual struggle. Like just the gameplay really got me, the variety of it and the verticality of the environments we saw. It seems like the environments are a lot broader or just wider than we've seen in previous Naughty Dog games, excepting I guess that like one kind of open world chunk of Lost Legacy, where it seemed like everything, just a lot of options, a lot of ways to go in, a lot of stairs to climb, glass to break through. Yeah, I was just really impressed by how varied it looked. I all of the politics and spoilers and all the story stuff aside, game looks great to play. That's what we want.
This is like the biggest leap in tech, I think, that we've seen from them since I'd say probably like Uncharted 2 to Uncharted 4. And it's like that big, like striking difference between those two games that we saw. Seeing this like stacked up right next to the original Last of Us is like, oh my gosh, we have come such a far way in such a short amount of time. It's so, everything is far more visceral and far more real. Everything feels like every hit feels more bone crunching than it ever did before. The sound design is fantastic. Like everything about The Last of Us, the first one especially, was so good at like conveying everything through sound. And I think that just based on the little bit of gameplay that we saw, this is that to an nth degree. This is like
which you didn't even know they could do. Like I didn't know you could improve on that, but here you
right,
go.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. Here's the one issue that I have with it is like, you know, I feel like plenty of people are miserable right now. I'm having a real tough time. Life sucks. We're trying to get through, do our best. It seems so bleak and sad. And even when they announced The Last of Us, I co-wrote this piece with Max Scoville that I think Neil Druckmann was really unhappy about at IGN. Where I was just like, it's so violent, and that is not what gets me into, like, the trailers were so violent, and not that I have any problem with video game violence, it's never a thing that's bothered me, but that's not what got me into The Last of Us. It was the relationship between those two characters, especially where one of them was full of wonder and hope, and she didn't really understand the negative side effects of what was happening around her. My biggest concern with Part 2 coming out right now and having seen that gameplay is that it's going to be a little too bleak for me, or too sad, or too brutal, and that it will bum me out to play, and it's not the game I need right now. And of course I want the studio to make the thing they want to make. Fuck what I need. Make a point.
But there's a larger zeitgeist here.
It's just on a personal level, I'm like, I don't know that I'm gonna want to play this right now.
You're not the only one, probably.
Yeah.
And I remember when I finished the first Last of Us, I was already sitting down and I was like, I need to sit down. Like it was a
honestly,
lot for,
this whole like thing parallels everything that Telltale did with the Walking Dead series that they made, which was very much like, hey, you have this older, more grizzled character teamed up with this smaller, younger character that is, you know, aware of what's going on, but not quite as much as they should be. And then after that first game, it's just like, okay, that first character, that character you're playing as, they're gone now for whatever reason. They're completely gone. Now you're playing as that person who you basically raised in the first game.
Yeah,
and
it makes you feel like the father.
Yeah, and now it's just like, well, let's just break them. Let's take all that wonder and hope and just crush it. And it's like, I understand it's definitely like a striking difference between what everybody's been playing lately, which is, I assume, Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like you go from that, it's like, oh yeah, everything's so sunny and bright and sunshiny. And then you look at The Last of Us Part 2's gameplay, it's just like, nope. Definitely not any of that. It's completely different.
Like Neil said that the giraffe moment in The Last of Us was supposed to be the last moment that Ellie has any innocence, and it's all supposed to be gone after that.
Oh, wow.
Which I can feel that. Yeah, it's pretty powerful. But I think I imagine Ellie doesn't have a lot of innocence left.
She doesn't seem to.
No,
she definitely seems aggressive.
Definitely she's really strong, like meat shields and stuff. Hell like stabbing people like it's nothing. Like I'm impressed.
Yeah,
maybe
right
even a little bit aroused, but
it is. She has become like, at least in all of these trailers and the gameplay I've seen, super aggressive, and it is such a departure from the first one, and it's I'm excited. I think I'll need a little bit of an explanation as to how this happened. Although living in that world, I feel like you have to become strong or die.
It's also like what she meant, you know, and how people were trying to use her. I feel like I can understand how this happens. And have you guys had anything spoiled for you? I've not had anything, so I actually I'm
completely spoiler free.
Yeah, I accidentally read the spoiler. Somebody posted them somewhere, and I sort of glanced at them. So I don't remember a lot of, but I remember a few points. But then I've also
some of them are untrue.
That's right. Some people have said that those are fake, like the written down ones. So I hope. I do think, you know, you make a good point about Animal Crossing, and that got so popular, I think, because people need a break from the just tedium of life right now. And meanwhile, this feels like more of a look into the future. Like
part of me is wondering if it'll be good therapy. Like
maybe,
you know,
maybe
a catharsis, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say very cathartic experience where it's just like, okay, well, this is how bad it could potentially get. But I could also become that much of a badass.
Yeah.
Maybe it wouldn't be that bad.
Get the forearm tattoos and shit. All right.
It is so violent. It's so violent. Like when there's that scene when the Scar leader is like clipper wings and they just get the hand. It's like, oh God.
I don't know if a lot of people have seen that, but that whole sequence was released as like a trailer or something a while ago.
Yeah,
and I've seen it because,
like
we edit these videos all the time.
Wasn't that the first one?
Yeah, I think so.
I thought so too.
Maybe.
Yeah. And we're like, what the hell is this? This isn't The Last of Us.
Yeah, I don't think Ellie's even in it till like the end or something.
No, she's not. And I mean, that's the thing that I really respect about what Naughty Dog has done is, I even heard this at the first PSX where they announced it, that they had said, if the first game is about love, then the second game is about hate. And even back then, I was like, I don't know if I want that. But one thing that they do very well is commit to a story that they don't care if you like it or dislike it in terms of, like how you feel about, say, the ending of the first game.
Yeah.
What matters to that studio is that you feel something and you aren't ambivalent or apathetic towards it.
Yeah.
And it definitely seems... I prefer that than trying to please everyone like a Ubisoft narrative, which no one ever fucking remembers.
Yeah, I think you have to have a strong vision and you have to follow that. And I think that's why a lot of indie games have been working so well when they're sort of made by these small studios. It's like there's no design by committee. It's a very sort of strong idea that gets followed through, whether or not a mass audience likes it or not. So
I mean, Ubisoft is so designed by committee that they have a department of people that is literally just there to predict trends so that their next game can be made based on whatever that they think the next trend is. Like Pirates, for example. Skull and Bones was one of those.
Or Vikings, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Vikings. But they're like, we think this is going to come back around, so we're going to jump on it in this amount of time. Like, it's nuts. That's how by committee is.
So weird.
I know. I want to know what their details are.
Just like
it's been tough.
Just like a little bit of like insight is like, who's your soothsayer, Ubisoft?
Yeah.
Who's there with the crystal ball just being like, oh, what's next? It's
just
going to be
God.
Ninjas are next. Everybody, ninjas are coming back.
It is true. I mean, these things do come around. Like when zombies had a few really strong years.
And I think vampires were pretty hot for a while.
Pirates,
definitely. Yeah.
I'm waiting for werewolves to come back around. We tried that once with what was that game? That one
maybe
game.
Dead West or something like that.
No, it was the one that like Sony was just like, this is going to be it.
The Order.
Yeah, the Order. Yeah.
1886.
The Order 1886. It was fun, but it was definitely like it did not catch the interest of the gamers at the time. But I think you're right,
gamers
Alana.
Did not like it.
I think you're right, Alana. I'd rather play. And this may seem really weird. I'd rather play through an entire game and end up hating it and have that like I just did not enjoy this. I have a lot of feelings about this, or play through a game and really enjoy it, then play through a game and just be like, yeah, it was a game.
Yeah.
I mean,
especially
it existed.
where the story's concerned.
Exactly.
If you don't like gameplay or a camera is bad, that's a whole other thing.
Where they're trying not to offend anybody. Like I felt like the last Far Cry was kind of like that. Like I felt like they could have.
Oh yeah, they had a strong premise and then pulled back.
The setting was cool.
Everything,
and then I don't know.
That is exactly what happened too. The writer of that game did write it with the intention of being a lot more controversial.
That
and
makes
was told
sense.
to scale back. Yeah, that's really obvious, and that's the big thing with The Last of Us is like the gameplay looks fantastic, and that's the thing that I really do care about more than anything. Level design's really important to me, and that looks really good. I don't know if I'm going to like the story or not. I'm not sold on the premise of it being driven by hate and how glooming it looks, but I'd at least prefer to be challenged and confronted and have negative emotions towards it than to just have nothing.
And that seems to be one of their strong points, right? Is like riding that emotional roller coaster. And that's one of my fears is that like with the sequel, you're always trying to punch things up. And like you're kind of saying, Alana, like, is it going to be too much where it's like these got you emotional moments? And I think some people even argued that with the first Last of Us with the two brothers, seeing like people kind of saw it coming and like, these were like kind of emotional gimmicks to get you to like feel, right?
Yeah.
And I don't, that's something I think that they're very conscious of and try to steer away from, but it can happen too, right? So
I will say
that's my fear.
The story from the first game was so good. And really simple in a way, but just kind of exploring that relationship. I still think about it. It's still one of my favorites. And so, with me, I think I share the sort of skepticism of sort of, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I'm going to get into this hate fest or because it seems like she's out for revenge. Something happened. She's on a revenge mission. But I trust the first one was so good. It's like, you built up enough goodwill with me to where I'm going to give this a shot. I know there's been some backlash about the spoilers or whatever, but
even then, at least people like at least there is such a structured story in place that people are angry rather than people not caring. Like I would way prefer to ship a story as a writer that people are like, fuck what you did.
Yeah.
Than to be like, story's fine.
Yeah, I think
was okay.
I'm probably on the opposite end of the spectrum with this. It's a testament to that gameplay that we saw today. But when, like, you can just feel how mad Ellie is. Yeah. And when she takes someone out and they're like, oh, Cheryl, and you're like, oh, yeah, Cheryl, like, you're done, Cheryl, get out of here. And then it's just like moving on to the next one. She's not even like, just the way they did the demo. And that's, I mean, that's a whole different art on its own, like watching these gameplay demos. Cause you know, that guy's played through it like 100 times to get like the perfect playthrough, right? And you're like, oh, why did he leave that there? Or how did he know that thing was over there? Obviously, because he played it 100 times.
Yeah, it's not going to look that clean when I play.
Yeah, and she's just
I'm going to avoid killing every dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The dog part was a little bit harsh, both of those. But yeah, I think, I don't know, there's probably other people out there with some pent up aggression that they could get out playing this game.
Vita's thrown on the floor. They want it all. That hit me hard.
See, I'm definitely in the vein of, I understand why people would be apprehensive about picking this game up, especially given all the circumstances, but I love watching horror movies. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. So everybody's just like, oh, what's your feel-good movies? Like Aliens.
No, actually,
seeing something like really terrifying and really like visceral, just to kind of like rip your mind away from everything else that's going on. It's so like, it's very captivating in those things. And I feel like this is another one of those situations where when you're playing this game, at least based off of what we've seen, it feels very much like it is going to take all of your attention. It is going to hyper focus you while you're playing. And I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, again, Animal Crossing's doing the same thing. Everybody's like so focused on, it's like, I need to get the ironwood bed. I need to find the DIY for this. I need to have it. I need to have my island perfect. This is that story version of it where it's like, you're going to want to play this to the end. You're going to want to see what happens. There's going to be enough twists and turns in there to keep you focused on it. And I think being able to be single-minded about something and follow through with that is definitely something that people could need. Not to mention the pent-up aggression thing is great. I mean, Ellie's really pissed, and I mean, we can all relate to just having that little bit of aggression in there. It's
I'd love to go out in the world and punch some shit right now.
Well, and she murdered a Vita owner. What was up with the Vita shot in the Hotline Miami? It was the weirdest. Like,
apparently, just Neil's a huge fucking fan.
That's awesome.
I love Miami.
I mean, why not?
Cool.
Hotline Miami's great. I love that song. I think it's Hydrogen by Moon. And the point where I was watching that and I realized that it was Hotline Miami, I was like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. It was like the one part of that made me really happy.
How many Vitas do you think they're going to sell from just that trailer?
And then the Hotline Miami account tweeted Hotline Miami is on Vita. And I feel like they'll get some sales out of it.
Totally. Cool. Yeah, totally. That must be a fun part about being, the director of a huge game like this. And you see it with movies too, like they'll cast their friends and little, cameos or actors. I love those little shout outs like that. So it looks great. I'm stoked. Let's move on, or because we could talk about Last of Us 2.
For sure.
Hour. So we also did a story on this, not specifically video game related, but it's YouTube. So it deals with commenting. Yeah. And so this has to do with the scoop that The Verge had on YouTube was apparently, still is, deleting certain comments that are critical of China's Communist Party. And it was kind of two phrases in particular. One was communist bandit. The other is 50-cent party, meaning there's sort of this belief among some people that commenters in China, like pro-government commenters, are paid 50 Chinese cents per post. But it's such a strange, they only deleted the Chinese language versions, not the English language translations. But YouTube isn't, it's like mostly blocked in China. So it's sort of this mystery of why is this happening? And then YouTube, when they were approached about it, this was an error. Sorry, we're going to fix it. But it raises all kinds of larger questions about what the hell. I mean, we know Google's tried to get into China for a long time, even built sort of a search engine that could like filter, that would basically comply with filtering requirements. But it's creepy, just sort of how much influence China might have behind the scenes and stuff like this. Not to sound conspiratorial, but
oh my God, Ryan, it's not. Like,
How
we
dare you.
discussed this when we were writing the script yesterday, but like, China does have all control of everything behind the scenes. That's just the truth. Like,
there we go.
It absolutely is. And it's crazy how little people realize that every movie that gets made, they want it to ship in China.
Right.
That's, you know, it's so uncommon that people don't. Like, there is a focus on a Chinese audience because that audience is so massive that it generates so much money that really, even though the West likes to think that we're Hollywood and we run everything.
Yes.
Most films are invested by China anyway. Tencent invests in movies. And I know people who've worked with Tencent on films who've gotten a list of things they aren't allowed to touch or things that they shouldn't have if they want success in China, including no black people. Like, that shit is real. It's also like, I think it's
awful.
No ghosts, I think, is a thing. Some of it's occasionally no homosexuality, no transgender people.
Occasionally,
they apparently aren't consistent on it in China. I don't know why
it's
that's
such
a thing.
Fucking yet Black Panther did fucking gangbusters over there.
Yeah.
Not to mention, people like to, again, like you said, people like to admit that this is, they like to believe that it's like, oh, you know, it's like, I mean, especially like with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's like, no, these are our American heroes and all that lovely bullshit. They added an entire scene with a bunch of different actors that don't appear in the movie elsewhere. I think it was Iron Man 3. It's like a 5 to 10 minute scene where China saves Tony Stark somehow, and it's just like, what what is this? I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. You want to believe that this is actually an error, and YouTube is just kind of, you know, it's like, oh yeah, you know what? It's definitely an error. It's like absolute nonsense, total bullshit.
It's a really totally specific error in this case.
Yeah,
it's a really specific error.
They say that all the time too. They did that probably about a year and a half ago, where they're just like, well, and it's still fucking happening. Anything that's, you know, labeled as LGBT in any way, shape, or form on YouTube, it's just like, it's immediately not kid friendly. And it's like, well, it was an error. It's like, well, when you gonna fucking fix it? Because it's still going on. I mean, there are people who lost their livelihoods and their communities and their fan bases and their subscribers because of what you did. And this is YouTube in a nutshell.
There are also fucking kids who are confused about, you know, what their sexuality is, and maybe the only person they can talk to is a one-way conversation with a YouTuber who can talk about that.
Yeah,
exactly. But then they don't have access to that. Like, there are a lot of downsides, and I mean,
these could be life and death issues, you know, of people struggling with, you know, their identities, and it's so
people criticizing the Chinese government is literally a life and death issue.
Absolutely.
People are dying based on the regimes that government has.
And they're clamping
the new
down.
two-child policy. Yeah. Like, you're allowed to have more than one kid now, but we still have such a disgustingly large amount of children just killed for that one-child policy, or they don't exist in records. It's like they can't get a job, they can't do anything, they just are ghosts in this. Like, criticizing this government is important.
Criticizing any government, but especially absolutely. The largest country in the world, and quickly becoming the superpower of the world, also, as the U.S. sort of falls off a cliff. And obviously, we've seen this, you know, come into gaming, you know, in terms of with the Hearthstone player who got suspended.
Blitzchung,
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those things that really drove home, you know, that and when the NBA executive criticized China, and they were just like, oh, hell no. Nope. We need
no more basketball. Well, guess what? Now no more basketball for the entire world. No more sports in general.
I feel
like it's just, this is a thing that's been happening for a really long time.
Yeah.
China controls so much that the West think they control. We just don't know, and it's just like finally that lid is coming off, and people are realizing that, you know, the country with the highest population that makes the most money controls the most stuff. But I do want to say, in case it's not obvious from a podcast of white people, I do not have any issue with Chinese people. That is not any of the problem. We don't want to be like the Chinese. It is literally an issue with the Chinese government and censorship. Which,
it's a government
in part,
issue.
I feel
it's
like
not
I'm
a person
trying to
issue.
defend the Chinese. Yeah,
that's right. Yes,
trying to be like, this sucks for you.
There's also like there's systemic issues, right? It's not all like. I mean, Brian was worried about sounding conspiratorial before, but it's not that like some of this stuff isn't as like vindictive and intentional as that, but it's a byproduct of like how much control China actually has in some ways of like we're specifically talking about marketing stuff. There isn't like a marketing direct. Well, maybe there is in China, but there isn't like a marketing director for Hollywood who's like, I guess I can't really like say this for sure, but there's basically a set of guidelines, just like when we make like YouTube videos and stuff. There's a set of guidelines for like why we think like different videos would do well, and people just like try to follow those to like make the most money, right? Mm-hmm. But if that's dictated by like government or any other issue or like cultural phenoms, like there starts to emerge a pattern across like entities that aren't connected between different companies and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds here, but basically what I'm trying to say is like patterns can form too, and that's also problematic. And just as problematic is if there's like a mustache twirling villain who like would dictate or censor people, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of YouTube in a nutshell, though. Dating all the way back to the beginning of YouTube time, they basically decided to do whatever the hell they want whenever they wanted. Originally, YouTube was this whole like culture for animators and animation stuff. Anything that was like 5 minutes or less, anything super short that was super repeatable, it would do gangbusters. I know that a lot of the Newgrounds community, when they were still hustling and bustling, now they're back and better than ever. They moved to YouTube because it was a way to monetize everything that they had, and they started being able to actually like pour more time and more money into it because it was a business venture. Then YouTube just toggles a switch one day and decides to say fuck you, and it completely destroys everything. And having, any government in charge of being able to toggle that switch for any reason, for any particular reason, I don't care what it is, it's a terrible thing because 1, it affects the livelihoods. 2, it literally kills people. And 3, it's just a way for people to actually like put these things together. I mean, a lot of what we do is, tethered to these different platforms and everything like that. And having just one switch away from everything collapsing is this perpetual terror. And seeing stuff like this is just, that pulling back of the curtain. It's just like, it's a glitch. It's absolutely not a glitch. It's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
That is I think it would be really unrealistic. Like that's such a reach. And I mean, it's like an easy PR spin they can always have. It's like, because not that many people know programming or coding, but like there's tons of people on the internet who know that stuff and could probably dive into it and like tell you exactly what happened.
But then YouTube's just like, absolutely not. We are owned by Google. We are the new superpower.
It's so weird that you can forget that like a journalistic outlet isn't allowed to lie. But YouTube is, as a platform, they can lie about whatever they want, and we can't even hold them accountable for it. It's just they're allowed to lie.
I mean, that's the whole thing that's going on Twitter right now, is the whole fact of just like, we will be fact checking the people who are in charge. And I think that's fine. I mean, that's logical. It's just like, well, technically, this isn't true. This is a person with, it's like hundreds of thousands of followers, potentially millions of followers on their account, and they say something that's completely a bold-faced lie and completely untrue. Being able to say, it's like, yeah, okay, we're going to put a little asterisk at the bottom of your tweet that says, hey, maybe you should stay informed about this. We'll link you to some ways where you can be informed and you can read about it and you can understand why what they're saying isn't necessarily true. Of course, it involves the user actually taking the time to click that thing, but having that little thing that says like, well, maybe this isn't exactly
there are
the
also
truth.
Obviously complications like what their inherent biases are and who fact checks the fact checkers and all that shit, but generally private platforms are allowed to do whatever they want, and it's your choice to use it or not. But this one particularly, when it comes to removing those comments, like it just feels like, to your point earlier, Caden, that YouTube was originally a very expressive creative platform and has now become more and more corporate and more restricted because Google makes all their money from ad revenue. That's what they really care about.
Hell yeah.
It just I think especially in the gaming space where we've seen a lot of restrictions, Funhouse struggles with censorship all the time just for having occasionally inappropriate content. Well, occasionally.
Occasionally. just
nice of me.
Here and there. Just a little bit.
Sometimes we make a joke. I don't know.
I mean, sometimes we'll go on to Rule 34 and we'll browse for a bit, and it just happens
for the most part. But I feel like it just sets a really scary precedent of especially governments getting involved. It's like, we want to move away from this, don't we? This is not the direction we want to head in. We don't want
we're better than this, aren't we?
Censored.
As people, as cultures, we're smarter than letting people, just dictate manipulate comments. Us like this.
Yeah,
I think. I hope
so.
I pray.
I hope so. Who knows? But it's a scary one. Doesn't necessarily mean doom. Doesn't mean YouTube is going to die and everything's going to hell. It's just a red flag to me. That's like,
again, it's that pulling back of the curtain moment where it's just like, hey, here's the man behind the curtain. You know, it's like don't look at the man behind the curtain. Pay attention to the giant, all-powerful Wizard of Oz, the terrifying face that's telling you to watch out for things. And then you pull back the curtain and it's just Jim from accounting being just like, quick, we can get more money. It's just like, fuck you, Jim, get out of here.
And it's funny for those of us who grew up in the States, it feels like a little bit of turnabout, like, oh, we're not running things anymore, because you're sort of conditioned, or at least I certainly was as a child, like USA #1, we're the biggest, we're the best, you know, that post World War II atmosphere. And it's, you know, this is such a sign of all of this, you know, the Hearthstone thing, all this, it's just a sign of like how ascendant China is.
Oh, for sure. Again, absolutely. Like it's just becoming more obvious now. And I think India is a really interesting one, where the Indian population is massive and it's growing consistently, but India's entertainment is largely self-contained. They have their own massive industry, their own massive stars.
I love Bollywood movies. They're so fantastic. They're so good.
They doing some good shit over there, and they keeping it there.
One of my favorite movies of all time is absolutely a Bollywood movie. It was fantastic. It's 3.5 hours long, and it's a story of an entire family from like a concept to end, and it was amazing. It blew my mind.
Yeah, they're FUBUing it over there. It's for us, by us. It is. It feels like, this is just sort of our deal, and
that's
we're gonna,
good.
If you like it, that's great.
I love the idea of global entertainment and globalization in general, like in terms of, you know, sharing different cultures. But it's just that the point really is that the US isn't doing that. In some cases they are. I believe Birds of Prey only released in the US because of the rating, and like maybe Joker was the same. I'm unsure. But there are movies that have come out that have only released in the US that have still done incredibly well. But for the most part, any movie you get pitched, any studio who's going to want to take that movie is going to ask the question, can we sell it in China? Because that's a guaranteed audience of 1 billion people.
I mean, that's the entire reason that Warcraft movie even got made. 10 cents behind that whole thing. And everybody's like, wow, it really bombed in the States. It did really terrible.
Doesn't matter.
Do you know how much money the Warcraft movie made in China? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's irrelevant what happens here, really.
It's crazy.
10 cents behind everything.
All right, let's move on and talk about Japan. Actually, there was an aerial shot that surfaced of the Super Mario theme park in Universal Studios Japan. Looked very cool. I know this has been kind of
on board.
Yeah, this has been, you know, in the works for a while, but like I might have to take a special trip for this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think when you heard about it in
it
news
looks like real life Mario Bros. I mean, that's the best I can describe it.
Post-COVID, this is where I'm going. That's my vacation. That's my like, oh, it's all over, everything's fine. I'm going to the Mushroom Kingdom. That's where I'm going first.
I know the lines are going to be bad. I don't care.
Exactly.
That was the big up and down of that tweet, was like, I didn't think this was going to be real or even come together, and now it is, and it looks amazing.
It's very real.
But now nobody can.
I wonder why we had that, where I didn't really buy that it was going to be real. Yeah. I don't know why, but I mean, it just looks a lot denser than I expected, and the colors and
very dense.
It all looks plasticky, and man, I've never been this excited looking at a picture of a theme park.
I mean, honestly, it looks so. It's very reminiscent of Legoland, honestly, just taking a very quick glance at it with the bright poppy colors and everything looking, again, you said very plasticky, but I think that like suits that Mario aesthetic
for sure.
Well. It's that nice plasticky sheen. I mean, look at the trees. The trees are all just like bubbly looking. It's
I'm really happy.
I love everything about this.
I'm stunned they haven't made this earlier, considering like how iconic Mario is, how long it's been around. It's just... This seems like a no-brainer, but I realize these things are easier said than done. Although, Jesus Christ, in sort of this COVID-19 world we live in, who knows if theme parks, I mean, are they going to let in 5 people at a time? How's it going to work?
Oh, that would be the best theme park experience.
I've
no lines, no waiting. It's all private.
The launch of the Harry Potter Pokemon Go type game, I forget what it's called.
Oh, wow.
Wizards Unite?
Wizards Unite, I believe.
Yeah, I was in Universal with like maybe 20 people. That fucking ruled. And now I'm like, how do I ever go back? I didn't have to line up for a roller coaster. It was incredible. So much fun. And that's like the dream you have from when you're a kid, right?
Yeah.
Disneyland by myself. I could go to this with 5 people. Hell yeah, dude. They wouldn't be able to get me out.
That happened to me one time, at Six Flags. Like, there was no line for this one roller coaster, and it was a double loop called the Shockwave at Six Flags Arlington. We ran just as, and as fast as you can run back. It like, we must have run it a dozen times. The best.
You think it's the best day of your life? Probably is.
I still remember it, so it must have been up there.
Yeah, and I
one
think,
of those very, very vivid memories.
Yeah,
it's a good one. Keep that. I think to your point about why they didn't do this sooner, I think Nintendo's just really picky about what people do with their licenses.
Yes,
like, that's why we haven't, aside from the Switch, which they don't really count. We didn't get a mainline console Pokemon rather than just handheld, was because they just didn't want to do that to Pokemon.
Yeah, they didn't want to split their
confuse
user base. They didn't want to have to make people migrate. It took the unification of all of their things to one device to bring the biggest franchise of all time. It is the biggest money-making franchise ever, period. There is no thing that beats Pokemon on that list of profit. And it was handheld only until, as far as mainline games are concerned, last year.
Yeah, they just do what they want to do. They do what they want to do.
Really,
they always have.
Specific.
They were adventurous back in the day. I mean, that Super Mario Brothers movie does exist.
That's true.
And then as soon as that happened, they're just like, you know what? Maybe we don't do that anymore. No more. There was no more cartoons. There was no more movies. There was only projects, and everything was very contained. And I think now that they've realized, okay, we have a control over our brand now. We have that idea. We have that unified vision. We can take our own version of those like classic 1960s era, like we're going to build our own Disneyland kind of things. Like, but we have it in such a way. We have such a vision of it. Yeah. That's why you're seeing, it's like, hey, there's another Super Mario Brothers movie coming. It's going to be animated. It's done by Illumination Entertainment. And now we have this, which is this, very living, breathing Mario world as a theme park. I think we're going to start seeing things like this more.
And they've said, we're going to get more into movies. We're going to, start to, I think, sort of license this stuff more. It's interesting to me because no other company would, like, every other company in the world would have been licensing this stuff out, just Disney and things like that. And they just have this crazy roster of IP that no one else has. I mean, certainly not in video games. I mean, other you talk about iconic characters. Yeah, there's Disney, there's other companies, but they just have all this stuff. It's just, I think it's cool. I hope it turns into something. I hope it is as good as it looks. I'm not really a theme park person.
Honestly, all I really care about is just being there and looking at it. The rides don't even have to be
That's
good.
a good point.
It's like, honestly, just being able to interact with that world would be like super amazing. Yeah. What I would really like if Nintendo's listening, and I know that they're listening because they're a mega corporation and they always listen to everything. You know what? While we're making a wish list of things, can I get a Metroid animated series by Powerhouse Animation and just like the Castlevania series?
It was weirdly specific.
I mean, look at that Castlevania Netflix series. It's like, do that.
It's good.
Do that, but make that Metroid, because it would be amazing.
I thought you were going to say Pokemon MMO.
I mean, I've been saying it for 21 years. They're not going to do it.
Yeah, no.
Never.
Well, I guess Pokemon's the only one where they have made movies and animated shows and stuff, which have been pretty consistent.
It's because it's like adjacent. Nintendo has like there's Nintendo, then there's the Pokemon Company, and Nintendo has seats on the board of directors there. They
don't have all of it though.
No, they don't own. They own most of it, which, I mean, that's the only. They handle merchandising and all that lovely shit. That's why you have the Pokemon centers and everything like that. But Pokemon itself kind of like is self-contained. It's such a weird thing where it's like, can you imagine one game, one series being completely self-contained and isolated off from everything else and owned by one company? I mean,
yeah, it's crazy.
It's so weird.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's cool to see this coming to fruition. I hope it isn't just killed because of the pandemic. not to be a kind of a downer.
It's a realistic thing.
Yeah, but we'll see. All right. Let's move on. Caden, you dug this one up. This was about a very wholesome Nintendo Direct. So tell us a little bit about what happened.
So what?
I think I missed it.
So there was everybody's been clamoring for another Nintendo Direct, and Nintendo's been pretty silent about it. We've heard a lot of like murmurs of everything like that, but the indie community has decided to do their own direct, and it was called the Wholesome Direct, and it was about 40 minutes of really good, feel-good indie games. And I mean, all it was just cute game after cute games. It's like, hey, there's like some games had no combat. Some things is like there was a game.
I need to watch this.
Kind Words, which is literally just sending digital letters to people.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
That's the whole game. The whole game is sending nice letters to people and then getting nice letters back. And it's like, yeah, no, I could go for that. There's like Mondo Museum.
Sad we have to gamify being nice now.
I mean, hey, if we're gonna teach people to do stuff with video games, it's like right. I've learned so much through video games, and now maybe some people will learn how to be nice. But
now I'm gonna learn interpersonal skills.
Honestly, I definitely think people could learn that now more than ever, especially with the social distancing. It's like, we're going to come back into things and not know how to interact with each other that isn't through a screen. So a lot of these deal with a lot of that stuff. And some of them are just like super cute and super adorable. It was just a wholesome 40 minutes. 40 minutes of pure game. And they're all talked about by the developers behind them. So every single clip is like talked about with the passion of the people who wanted to make it, which is very unique.
I like that. Yeah, I love when they do that, when it's just the developer talking about it.
Yeah.
I wonder with Nintendo though, this also feels like they're going to hype up indies because who knows when the next first party game's going to come out because of COVID.
The best part about this isn't this corporate nonsense. Nintendo has nothing to do with this. This is just indie people like being like they made this whole thing.
It wasn't a Nintendo.
Wasn't Nintendo?
No, they kind of
that's
like
awesome.
They kind of emulated the style to a T.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
did you have a standout game, you guys?
Frog Song was really cute. Let's see.
If you like pixel art and you haven't seen Little Witch in the Woods yet, you should look.
Little Witch in the Woods is really great.
It's very cool looking.
Let's see. Lonesome Village had a tech demo, which was really good. There was one more that I really wanted to put out there.
It's pastel-y too. That's pretty.
Where was it?
I mean, Calico. There's a lot of these games that have kind of just been around for a while. I think they're just like ready to show more.
Yeah, they're like releasing again, or like they just want to remind you that something's there. Like there was Florence, which is on the Switch, which
Florence.
is a really great game. And a lot of these were just like, hey, these games already came out, or they weren't hyped up as much as possible, and we're just gonna start talking about a lot of these like cute, simple games. And they have a whole YouTube channel for all of these like little trailers, and then they had this Wholesome Direct, and I hope they continue doing it.
Are these all, dumb question, are these all coming to the Switch, or are these just for
these whatever? Are just games in general? I mean, hey,
there's a good chunk of them that are.
I mean, it's the easiest platform to develop for at this point. It's cheap, it's effective, and you will sell more copies on that than almost anything else. I mean, jumping back to...
That's been happening for a while. I forget what.
Shovel Knight made more money on the Switch than it made on any other platform, or I think it was all other platforms combined. Did not make as much as Shovel Knight did on the Switch years after it released, which is ridiculous.
The indies have been... they've been on the rise everywhere, but they seem like they have been really important to the Switch, because it's allowed them to fill out the library. And I know there's a lot of shovelware on the eShop right now. But there is a lot of good stuff too. Like I didn't have a chance to play Hollow Knight before I bought it for the Switch.
What a great game.
But it's just, you buy a Nintendo console for the first party games, obviously, but they've apparently really rolled out the red carpet for indie developers. So it's cool. It's cool to see them being more open, I think, than they have been in the past. Also, I like the diversity of games available now. It's just insane.
There is a game for everyone on the Switch, which is a very difficult thing for a lot of newer platforms. When a new platform comes out, it's hard to like have a good aggregation of things. And even the Switch kind of launched in this like weird thing of everybody bought Zelda, and then we waited. But now it's such
we all played Zelda for a month.
Yeah. And then it's just like we're waiting for the next Nintendo thing. And now I don't feel like that's the case anymore.
You're right. There was a period where I feel like I was criticizing the Switch for not having enough games. I was really just holding out for Smash for a long time, I think. But now, there's tons of stuff that I can play and frequently do play.
Honestly, though I do have to agree with Evan. Probably the biggest standout for the entire, like, honestly, the entire Wholesome Games like channel as a whole, and specifically from this direct, is definitely Little Witch in the Woods. It's
really
super cute. It's very
really
pastel. Clean. It's very, again, it's one of those things that's like, if you like things like Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing, it's gathering something, creating something, and it's very like a light and fluffy experience, which, that's pretty much the entirety of the direct is.
It was made in South Korea.
Here's cute things. Here's cute, adorable things.
Yeah, it looks good.
Let's. I forgot to mention. I forgot this story. The Skyrim Grandma, who was. We won't spend a lot of time on this. We'll move to the questions. But she had sort of. I forget her name now. She had been
Shirley.
Yeah, Shirley.
Right.
Shirley
Curry.
Shirley Curry gained a certain amount of internet fame for her playthroughs of Skyrim. She's a grandmother. She refers to her viewers as her grandkids. She has
adorable.
A healthy YouTube following.
Bless her.
But she has, stories came out that basically she shot this video basically saying she was taking a break for health reasons. Then she kind of went off on people who were commenting and sort of the chat and sort of suggesting how she should play. She didn't like it. It led to some stories. She got bullied off the internet. She came out later and said, no, I'm just taking a break for health reasons. But I gotta say, I watched that video and she did seem annoyed with,
She does talk about the comments. So the retraction was weird because then it started to sound like people were lying, but...
It's one of those things that it seems like it was like, hey, yes, I'm taking a break for health reasons. And then as soon as as soon as she was saying this, it's like, but while I'm here to tell you some things that are a part of my health issues, one of my health issues is dealing with the shitty comments. And it's just like, yeah, that's a relatable thing. I think we all can kind of like be there with that.
Or maybe she walked it back a little bit. Maybe I think, she was getting some blowback online.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We definitely took a lot of heat for this on the daily because just, not to get too into how the sausage is made, but we'd already shot that video at like 9 in the morning and had been into post long before. And so by the time we got it up, the story had changed and all that.
And then her tweet came, and that happens.
And her tweet came, and that happens, and that sucks. And I think it is kind of a combination of both because there's people who want one outcome or the other. And so like if people want the opposite outcome, they're quick to comment like, oh, the story's false. But it's really like there's a little bit of a gray area there where I think it is like a combination of the two things. And I think the thing that what I was reading into from what she tweeted about and, because she was going back and forth. I forget which site it was. It wasn't VentureBeat. It wasn't Video Games Chronicle. It was
VG247.
Oh, VG247. That's right. Yeah, I knew it was one of the V ones.
Yeah.
And
they're kind of an aggregator, but they do have some original.
Yeah, it sounded like she was being a little bit more defensive of her community and that saying like her community is like very good and strong. And she it seemed like her community was taking heat and that wasn't really what the story's about. But also, I think, to an extent, things get embellished in a way where it's like you want your headline to be punchy or whatever. And so it becomes this thing of like, oh, trolls like kick grandma off the internet.
I had
when
this
thing not so much that.
To very much relate this to myself, I apologize. Where you guys might have seen that I went viral 2014 for screenshotting something where I was sending kids' moms rape threats that they would send me.
Oh, right.
I remember that, yeah.
As part of that, some outlets said that it was Gamergate because it was exactly the same time, really. I think it was like maybe just before that all went down. Yeah. So headline was Gamergate sending female games journalists rape threats. And I never said that. I never said it was Gamergate. I think in one of the first interviews I did about it, someone said, do you think it's related to Gamergate? And I was like, well, it's related in that these are about negative comments on the internet.
Internet hate towards women,
Yeah,
and as more outlets pick something up, it kind of becomes the telephone game.
It became Gamergate was harassing me. And then Gamergate started harassing me. So I had to go and tweet at all those outlets and be this is not true. I believe this is just a fucking kid. I don't think he's a Gamergate. I don't think it had anything to do with it. But I had to correct really all of them. And a lot of them, in a really shitty way, wouldn't actually update their headlines. They would add a comment as a correction at the very end. So they still got the clicks of the headline of me saying something that I wasn't saying.
See, at least we change headlines. When we make a thing where it's like, all right, the story changed. while we had already shot the story, again, our pipeline is we shoot it really early in the morning. It goes into edit. It gets posted. By that time, sometimes things change. And by the time it's actually posted, it's like, okay. And as soon as it gets posted, it's like, okay, well, now we need to change this. We'll change thumbnail, we'll change title.
Pin comment
and then we'll pin a comment and we'll change the description a bit. And we will make sure that the package is presented in a way that is just like, hey,
you're not hurting another human for clicks.
Yeah, exactly.
So that sucked, but
the difference is, I think our primary outlet is YouTube. I think if you're on YouTube, and y'all all know this, but you are much more directly connected to your audience.
Oh, absolutely.
Much more
benefit of the platform.
Sensitive. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, but if they cry foul about something, it's like, oh, we need to fix this now. Whereas I think a lot, with more traditional outlets, and I've worked for them, it's sort of like, people are complaining. That's fine. It's just not, there's not that immediate.
I also just think the video game audience is a lot more tapped into its own culture than a lot of other branches of news are. But I did want to say before I then misrepresent myself, because I was tweeting at those outlets and being like, this isn't true. I never said Gamergate did this. Gamergate then started supporting me. So it's like a very weird turn where they were like, you're an example of journalism being shitty. Because they were lying about you, so then they started supporting me. So it was this very weird full circle thing. But
look, both things can be true, but also you both are wrong.
Yeah, it was super weird. I relate to like seeing a story get carried away because I did make a comment when asked by a journalist who clearly wanted to use it, where I said, "Well, yeah, it's related," but I didn't mean it is directly. It is Gamergate. Yeah. Like it was just this thing that like really blew up, and I was like, sure, I said that, but that's not what I fucking meant.
This is the case of people who are presenting, be it information or it's like rather than being a journalist, like a lot of people are, there is that dual hat of you're a journalist and a personality. It's just like I am presenting the news, I did my research for this and everything like that, but I am also a personality that's trying to be one, entertaining, and two, course you through this where you're not bored by it's just like, because you can read through, it's like I can sit here and I can read you this article. Will it necessarily be super entertaining? Probably not. So you have to make these things, especially on YouTube, you have to make this clickable, understandable.
We have a lot of columnists now, not journalists.
Exactly.
That's what it feels
like the biggest takeaway of Shirley's story is boiled down to two quotes is, she was feeling stressed. She felt like she was wasting her time because her audience was declining because she had a huge boom. And then it's like, her usual peak views now on videos are between 5 and 8,000. Between 5 and 8,000, which, if she was making money off of it or she was getting advertising revenue or she felt like she was, creating something unique and people were absorbing it. And it just crashed and burned. And it's just like, well, it's like, I feel like whatever I was doing is a waste of my time. And the fact that I keep doing this is stressing me out, especially now. And she's older at this point. You really don't want to like stress yourself out. Plus the world is already stressful enough as is, especially now. And it's like, so it's very obvious. It's like, I want to take my health under control. And part of this stress comes from not necessarily you, the viewers, but the little bit of the negative comments and a little bit of me feeling like I'm spinning my wheels. And honestly, I think that, hell yeah, Shirley, I can fucking totally get behind that sentiment. Sometimes you just feel tired and you want to take a break. So take a break. And I hope you come back.
Burnout is a real thing. Yeah.
I hope she comes back happy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, see, that's my big takeaway is support Shirley.
Yeah.
Just support her. Like, whatever she wants to do for whatever reason. I am glad that she is a part of the YouTube gaming community and that she made content at all. She can have any reason in the world to not want to make content right now, and I'm okay with that.
All right, let's go to the questions. We're kind of coming up on time, but we have time. We have time for a few. Cody Mireles says, with gaming going digital/subscription based, do you foresee a situation where a copyright holder would suddenly take back their products, leaving consumers empty-handed? If so, is there any recourse on the consumer end that you can think of? That is a huge,
where the fuck is Scott Pilgrim versus the World? God damn it. I bought that twice. I can't play it anywhere. I'm pissed. So it's like, it's just gone.
Hasn't this already happened?
Yeah, it exists. They did happened with a lot of the Konami.
It has, and you're screwed.
PT is even kind of the same.
PT's the same thing. I have my base PS4, and I copied the data from my base PS4 to my PS4 Pro, which means I have 2 copies of PT, and I will not be removing it. It is.
Yeah, I just kept my PS4 just so I could keep PT, but I should just transfer to my Pro.
Just duplicate it, and now I have 2 just in case something happens to that.
I get anxious
PS4.
about that. Or anytime that my PS4 was like exceptionally loud, I'd be like, "Oh, sweet baby PT,
please no,
hang in there, hang in there, hang in there."
But yeah,
the quick thing I would just say about this is that it's not about like a copyright holder just all of a sudden being stingy and saying like, we're going to take this product back. It's more of the situation like with PT where it's like, oh, things went real bad and now we don't know who owns this, so now it's going to disappear.
Often
or
licenses expire, music can be a huge part of it. It's definitely complicated, but I mean, here's the thing.
Stuff that's scary. Yeah.
Steam could do that to you from the jump. If your Steam account gets terminated even wrongfully, you can no longer access any of those games you're effectively licensing from them.
You're done. Yeah.
Unless even that doesn't count most of the time. I was going to say, unless you own it physically, you don't own video games. You're just licensing the software temporarily.
Buying a physical disc doesn't mean you own it physically. You own a physical license, basically. It is a key that when you put it in the system, it's not like buying an SNES cartridge or, even a PlayStation game or a PS2 game where you can plug it, you can just pop it in and play it. This is a startup key, and that is fucking it.
This is the real problem with digital ownership, because yes, there is no ownership. It's like y'all explained it better than me. It sucks. I hate it. It's the worst part of the future in my opinion. And as we start going more and more toward cloud gaming, that's just going to be the reality. It's going to be like Netflix. Sometimes games are going to be on there and then maybe they disappear, In terms of if there's any recourse on the consumer end of what we can think of, Australia is actually really good about consumer policies. They had already had major lawsuits with both Steam and with Sony regarding their refund policies, because in Australia, consumers are entitled to refunds. I think it's 14 days, no matter what. So yes, but it is going to take an entire country to make this shit change. There are potential lawsuits or policies in place that will protect consumers from this stuff. It has to catch up, but it's not going to happen on a small level, and it's also certainly not going to happen in the US. It's going to be someone else who spearheads that. The US is so company pro.
It's why I like things like limited run games. Like I buy a lot of things. So it's like, I don't know if this is still going to be around on a storefront later because it's such a small game or such a small project. Who knows if it'll be around later? So I bought a bunch of stuff. I bought the new Shantae game on Switch through them because I want to make sure I still have that game, because who knows what the hell's going to happen.
The, I believe it's the Video Game Conservation Society. It's the charity that is basically trying to make sure
to back up all these games.
It's the Video Game History Foundation. They
it was way off.
Well, there's gamehistory.org, I think. And
that's them, gamehistory.org, the Video Game History Foundation. I talk about them anytime there's digital content in a story that I'm doing. It's like, seriously, we're going to lose shit. Shit is already disappearing, so we need to have something.
For a long time, All right, let's move on. Hungry Moose asks, I think that one of the reasons VR isn't taking off is because it's too late in the game. Most people want more casual games that they can listen to music or podcasts while playing for hours. VR is just too physically and mentally taxing for that. Agree or disagree? That's an interesting perspective. That I think there's a couple of reasons. I think the hardware costs, the sort of buy-in costs are just very high for VR. And before Half-Life Alyx, I don't think there was a game where it was like a system seller for VR. I think maybe that will change for Half-Life Alyx, but I do agree. I multitask when I play games all the time. And so it does feel, with VR, you're doing VR. You aren't doing anything else.
You can't even check your phone. Like, generally, I would say I disagree with this statement. I don't think there's anything about VR being too late in the game. I don't think more people want casual games. We're consuming more video games in terms of hours than we have ever before, which is inherently not casual, even if you're right, you could be listening to a podcast or whatever at the same time. I think you're right, Brian. It's the price limitation, the setup limitation, and the software. I don't think it'll ever happen that VR will be our number one go-to, because you like having the comfort of your living room. You like playing a game in front of someone else. You like a TV. You like being able to look at your phone or eat or whatever. You like being able to do that stuff. But I absolutely think VR is going to get better than it is, and I don't think it's related to casual gaming or it being too late.
It's
just the beginning.
I just think by the nature,
it's
nichey. It's just going to be a niche thing. Maybe not, but I just with that equipment and just sort of the physical, costs and demands of it. I just think it's always going to be.
I think
it's a certain slice of the pie.
I think there's another part of this too that and they kind of tapped into it. It's like being able to sit down and it's like I can sit here and I can play Animal Crossing or I can play Resident Evil or I can play Doom and I can sit there and I can play it for hours and hours and hours and hours and not have any problems. You can't necessarily do that, or I should say most people can't necessarily do that in VR because after about 45 minutes or an hour, you start getting dizzy or headaches or anything like that.
Drink at some point.
There's something to, it's like you have to physically take a thing off. That said, I did play through all of Resident Evil 7 entirely in VR in one sitting. And it was fucking amazing.
How long did that take?
Cool.
It took about 5 hours. It was pretty.
That's not that bad.
It's a reasonably short game. I mean, it's not a difficult game.
Too bad.
I feel like that game took me way longer than that to finish. But
it was my third playthrough. It was in fairness, it was my third playthrough.
See, I was gonna say there's plenty of stuff that I will play in VR. Like when I was at IGN, I was having to review VR games. That was hours and hours and hours in VR. That was totally fine. Anytime I get to talk about VR, I always want to give a shout out to Chronos. Made by Gunfire Games, who are known for Darksiders. I love that game. It is a fantastic VR game where your head is the camera, like old school Resident Evil style. And one of the coolest mechanics they had is that there's an enemy type that will only move when you aren't looking at it. So when it's not in frame and you look away, you hear it moving and then you have to look back.
Like the ghosts on Super Mario Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, or like it felt more like the
Weeping Angels from Doctor Who. Yeah,
like it's 100%
I'm with
like
you,
that.
Alana.
But you still have to move your character. So sometimes you're trying to move your character while you can't see because you're trying to look at where the next angel is. Like it was so cool. I really, really love that game. Highly recommended. It's very like Dark Souls, Zelda.
Very SCP sounding too. Like with
super cool.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of really good VR games that you can play for a really long time without any issues. But yeah, it's inherently isolated. I think you're in part right, Brian. I do think that VR is going to take off way more than it has as we start getting more killer titles, as it starts getting cheaper, as more people start getting their hands on the Quest, for example, because that's goddamn fantastic. Right. It's so convenient. Right. I don't think it's ever going to be the number one go-to gaming platform, and I don't know where people ever got that idea. I don't think it was ever trying to do that. It doesn't seem possible.
It's a different experience. It's a completely different, and that's fine. I'm glad it's there. VR has famously for decades. I mean, there have been attempts to get VR off the ground. It does seem like it is stuck somewhat this time. I think with companies like Valve getting behind it, and Sony, I think that's all good, and then the Oculus line. So I think it's hopefully here to stay. More options are always better.
I think it's fun. Have a huge time. Yeah. Huge time.
All right, let's do one more. I think we have time for this. Kind of an interesting one from Rob Alexander. Do you guys think that the traditional brick and mortar news outlets, I like brick and mortar news outlets, will have a different view on gaming after the pandemic? And I think what Rob means is, historically,
like Fox News?
Well, historically, I think the media has been sort of down on what the hell is this crap that the kids are playing? I think that's sort of the underlying message on everyone. I remember when I was a kid and the Super Nintendo came out, all of the major news channels, at least it seemed like, all the networks were doing stories about why do they need a new, there already is a Nintendo, and they were sort of acting like it was some sort of con, that why do we need a new system? And I remember my parents being like, we're not buying you that, you already have one. I think as my generation, Gen X, has gotten older, and now you're seeing, I think the coverage has gotten better. Like the Washington Post has a video game section now, like a special team. There are reporters like Gene Park who play games and know what they're talking about.
They've played a Bejeweled once or two.
Yeah, no, I mean,
he's doing all right.
Been there.
And Bloomberg's coverage, they hired Jason Schreier. They got some people. So I think I think some of that stuff is a little bit generational. But yes, I do think it's, in the pandemic, people have been playing a lot more games.
And absolutely think that.
I think that's good.
The stupid old people outlets are finally going to realize the value of video games.
I disagree. I mean, we were talking about clickbait earlier. They're going to do what they're going to do. They've got a perfectly
no matter
clear
what.
agenda.
They will demonize GTA 6 no matter what. But
it's only a matter of time before this goodwill towards games ends. And I think that goodwill towards games will end probably about a year or two after, because they're just like, hey, okay, you know what? We played a bunch of games while we were in lockdown because it was necessary, and we kind of got addicted to having fun with them and exploring really vast and diverse worlds, and seeing things through a different lens and exploring different stories in ways we never thought imaginable.
GTA 6 came out and they were back to fuck this banner.
But also, a lot of this game has prostitutes, and how fucking dare they?
A lot of that is driven, though, by the government. And whenever there's like a mass shooting, they always blame video games.
Hey, we're circling all the way back around to the first story again.
It's a convenient scapegoat for them. And a lot of those
they don't understand.
It's true.
Well, right. And I think also a lot of them are really old and don't understand video games.
Well, here's the thing. Anytime for something to be considered art, generally just all the people who didn't grow up with the thing have to die out.
Yeah, I agree.
Was the same.
Yes.
It's very
started
true.
People like, not art, garbage, read a book, go to an orchestra, but then, the old people who it's new to depart, and suddenly film is art. And I feel like the same will happen for video games. And so while I absolutely think you're right, Evan, that like it is still going to be a scapegoat, it is still going to be used as clickbait, I do also think that this will have opened up the minds of at least some subsection of those oldies to the mental health benefits or social benefits of playing video games in a way that they probably never would have been confronted by otherwise, or refused to be confronted by. Whereas now it's a talking point.
It also feels like the blame video game defense, it feels like it doesn't stick as much as it used to.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It's because it's not as new as it used to be.
Right, that's right. But they still do it. But that, like, I remember, God, when the Rage was bitching about Mortal Kombat and the blood in Mortal
Night Trap
Kombat
and the sexual content.
Yeah, but there were government hearings on that. And I mean, I just feel like people are like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, do you remember Nintendo throwing Sega under the bus? It's like, well, we didn't include blood in our Mortal Kombat. Fuck you, Sega.
It was sweat. Yeah.
Those are
the best.
Happier
times
in some ways. The first video I ever cut actually had featured Jeff Keighley on like Fox News or something talking about Mass Effect and Commander Shepard having sex with Liara. So
hell yeah.
That's hot.
I don't know. Like even as recently, that's not that that was probably like 10 years ago or something. I don't know, but it will always kind of be a peg or like a something in like the mass media's toolkit.
Someone will always say something.
Yes. Yeah,
look at these degenerates. Yeah. But I think you're right. Like once enough of the old studio managers and stuff and producers, executive producers and people who control the media in that way are kind of out of the picture, then it starts to get better.
The day we can finally have content where somebody doesn't pick up a controller and smash every button on screen, that will be the first day that people finally understand video games as a medium. But I don't think we're quite there just yet. I still think we're going to see sitcoms with that shit constantly for the next 10, 15 years.
Well, speaking of sitcoms, I mean, to Alana's point, TV was considered absolute trash for decades. And a movie star would never appear on a TV. I mean, it was considered such a step.
We had that with streaming, and now we got fucking Scorsese. It comes full circle.
He's not happy about it, but he did it. Yeah.
He still did it, and he paved the way for others to do it.
That's right.
Just going back around to the first story, if you just follow the money, once video games are making those people money, then you'll see the messaging.
Who are you not allowed to criticize? That's who runs things. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thanks everybody for joining. Alana, thank you for joining us on the
thanks for
podcast.
having me.
A real treat, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
There's still shoot 'em up games. There's still all kinds of it's kind of traditional video games, but I love just the variety of stuff available now.
Yeah. You guys just made an extremely compelling case for Stadia. I'm just letting you know.
Big fan.
Well, yeah.